Welcome everybody to today's video where we're going to be talking about the first home savings account. This is a new registered account that was offered to Canadians starting in 2023. This is a great option for any Canadians that haven't yet bought their first house and are planning to eventually do so. So how does the first home savings account work? Well, before we go into great detail in that, it's important to know what the other options are as well. So we talked about how this is new for 2023, but something that's been around for a long time is the homebuyers plan. So I'll go into a little bit of detail on that first before we move on to the first home savings account. So the homebuyers plan is available for Canadians where they have an RRSP account to withdraw money from their RRSP account to buy their first house. So who qualifies? Well, you need to be a first-time home buyers. What does that mean? That means you wouldn't have lived in a house you owned this year or any of the previous 4 years. You or your spouse owns, I should say. You have a written agreement to buy or build a new house. You're a resident in Canada, and you're buying this house for your primary residence. You're planning on living in it within the first year after buying it. Same rules apply for the essentially first home savings account, but we'll go into details for that later. So the home buyers plan, you can withdraw up to $35,000 from your RRSP account, tax-free, or immediately tax-free, in order to put a down payment on a new house. And in a previous video, we talked about how our RSPs work. So if you haven't looked at that, check that out first. This qualifies for anybody who is buying a house for themselves or even for a related person who qualifies for the disability tax credit. Now, the funds needed to have been placed in the RSPs at least 90 days before you withdraw it. So if you're looking to buy a house right away and you don't yet have an RSP, then you might be out of luck unless you are planning on buying out farther than 90 days. Okay. Something else to note is that group RRSPs and or locked-in RSPs may not qualify for that. So you want to make sure that your RSP does qualify. Now, I mentioned earlier that when you take the money out of your RRSP to buy the house under the home buyers plan, it's tax-free at that moment. But you need to repay that money into your RRSPs starting in the second year after you make the withdrawal. So if you made the withdrawal in 2024, repayments will need to start in 2026. And the repayment is going to be divided into 15. So if I took out $30,000 from my RRSP under this home buyers plan, 30 divided by 15 is going to be $2,000 per year. So starting in 2026, you would have to make a $2,000 contribution back to your RSP to repay it so that it doesn't get put into your income. And so what I'm alluding there is if you don't make the repayment, which you don't need to, whatever you don't make as a repayment gets added to your income in that year. So in that example where the repayment was $2,000 per year starting in 2026, if I don't make the $2,000 repayment, that gets added to my income and I'm gonna have to pay tax on that number at whatever tax rate I'm at in that year. I can also make partial repayments. So if I made a $1,000 repayment, $1,000 would go towards my repayment, and then the other $1,000 is added to my income. You can also repay more than that if you wanted to. So you could put the full $15,000 right away. You don't even need to wait those 2 years either. But at most, it's going to take you that 17 years to make that repayment back to your home buyers plan. Okay, so that is the option that's been available to Canadians up until 2023, are the only option in terms of utilizing your registered accounts for a first house purchase or build. But now with this FHSA account, we have a different option, and quite frankly, in my opinion, a really good option for anybody who would qualify as a first-time home buyers that's looking to, or that's even thinking about buying a house or building in the near or distant future. So how does it work? Well, you need to be between the age of 18 or 71 to qualify. You need to be a resident in Canada. And again, you need to be a first-time home buyers. That same definition applies as what we talked about earlier for the home buyers plan. Okay, so why do I think it's a really good option for people? Well, it really takes the best of the RRSP account and the TFSA into one account. So What I mean by that is, like an RSP, any contributions you make, you get to claim as a deduction in the year that you make it. So if I make a $1,000 RSP, not RSP, first home savings account contribution in 2024, that is going to be a deduction on my 24 taxes. And if I'm at a 30% marginal tax rate, that's saving me $300 on my tax return that year. Similar to both the RSPs and the TFSA, whatever investment I put my money in within that account, that registered account, is going to be tax sheltered as it stays in that account and grow tax free, thus allowing you to earn a better after tax return than you would if it was just saving in a non-registered account. Okay, and then unlike an RSP or home buyers plan, and like a TFSA, when you take the money out, if it's for a qualifying withdrawal for a first-time home purchase or build, then that is going to be tax-free. So not only do you get the deduction upfront, the tax-free income during the life of the account, you also get to take the money out tax-free, which is just phenomenal. Now, what are the contribution limits? So similar to the TFSA and RSPs, there are limits to this account. So you can put up to $8,000 a year into your FHSA account, and up to a maximum of $40,000 a lifetime. Now, if you don't make the contribution, unused contribution room does carry forward up to a maximum of $8,000. And so what does that mean? Well, if I made $1,000 contribution in my first year, that $7,000 that I haven't contributed or unused contribution room gets carried forward to next year. So then next year I can make that my new $8,000 limit plus the $7,000 I didn't make the year before, and I can make up to $15,000. Now, if I put in another $1,000 again in that following year, now instead of that full $15,000, then following year I don't get that $14,000 unused plus another $8,000. What's going to happen is I can only carry forward up to $8,000, so I'm going to be able to make a $16,000 contribution. The $8,000 for that new year plus the maximum carry forward of $8,000. Okay, so I talked about how the withdrawals from the account, if they're eligible or if they're meeting the criteria, are going to be tax-free. So what happens if you take the money out and it's not to purchase the first home? Well, if you do that, then those withdrawals are going to be taxable withdrawals, and you're going to be subject to tax at whatever marginal rate you are at that time. Better option is obviously to use it for a first house, but if the problem with it is that the account can only be open for 15 years. So if you are 30 years old when you first open the account, that means you need to use up the money for a house or close the account by the time you're 45. So if you haven't reached the point where you're buying a house by the time the account gets closed, you have the option of taking the money out, paying tax on it, or you can transfer the money, do a direct transfer of the money into an RRSP or RIF account or RRIF account, tax-free, and that won't even affect the contribution limits in those accounts. So that would be a much better option to take the money out, because you can just roll it over tax-free and keep using the tax-deferred benefits of the RRSP account. So that pretty much goes over the basics of the first home savings account and the home buyers plan. If you do have more questions that's specific to your situation, want to know if it really applies to you, talk to your tax professional. They'll be able to help you through the finer details of that. Again, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.